ritual that I had to do. For some time now, I had intended to.
Going through old letters, flicking through my diary, calling up the ghost of the girl I used to be. All these words, oh, what were they worth? They all burn the same, my old flame. Strange to feel that I don't fully grasp the line that links the person to the past. Want to offer comfort, to reassure you. If I said it would be easy, that would be untrue. Oh, these words, oh, what were they worth? They all burn the same, my old flame. Pieces of a life seen through another lens. Here's to the woman I could have been, and here's to absent friends. The embers were glowing like a city seen from space. Love always leaves a mark on us, it always leaves a trace. Far away from no end and no beginning, all the stars are looking down on us. This is the time we are given before all we return back to the dust. No end and no beginning, all the stars are looking down on us. This is the time we are given before all we return back to the dust. No end and no beginning, no end and no beginning, no end and no beginning, no end and no beginning. Far away from no end and no beginning, all the stars are looking down on us.
Hello, I'm Hannah.
I'm Ollie.
And I'm Raevennan. And you're listening to Xenolalia Tapes, a Moule podling brought to you by Hannah Moule and the Moulettes. Welcome to this Moule podling, accompanying the last Xenolalia release of 2021. And what a year it's been. In November, we embarked on our first UK tour in 4 years. And to kickstart such a momentous occasion, we hosted a 9-day residency at the Rosehill, Brighton's most exciting and innovative arts hubs. All our work culminating in 4 nights of one-off performances from our strings, horns, a cappella and multi ensembles. There were 25 musicians in all and multiple teams of extraordinary beings working behind the scenes. To celebrate the release of Xenolalia 8, we've got our a cappella supergroup back together to ruminate on human communion, the relationships we have or don't have with our younger selves, and the importance of ritual in even the smallest of acts. Here's Hannah to tell us a little more about how she wrote this song, Words.
I have a particularly strong connection with the genesis of this song and how it came about. My mum had strongly hinted that it would be good if I were to come back and clear the attic, which was full of my papers, business papers, from school times. All these letters and all these diaries that I'd written, lots of old photographs, people I hadn't thought of in years, and people that I had thought of a lot, but for whatever reason, I'm not in touch with them, or in some cases, they're not around anymore. And through all this nostalgic foraging, it was an emotional situation. I think it just really led me to consider the relationship with your past selves, because there was just things I didn't remember. You know, memory's an interesting thing in nostalgia, how subjective it can be. There were things that I just did not comprehend about my own choices or my own thoughts at that time, just things I didn't recognise. And I thought that was so interesting that your own timeline could be that fragmented. And I was really curious as to whether this was, like, how many people experience that kind of slightly dysphoric relationship with their younger self. Is that troubling? Or how should I feel about that?
I don't think I know the answer to that. But regarding memory, I think it's really intriguing. We know so little about how the brain works, really, and how memory works. It works so differently for everybody. Looking back in that way, like through written correspondence or journals, is not something I do regularly at all, actually. I do a lot of thinking about the past, but I don't necessarily travel there through an old journal or old letters. But when I do, on the rare occasion, I find it really interesting to see and notice how handwriting changes. And sometimes it doesn't for some people, which is also very interesting to me. Like, my mum's handwriting has been exactly the same my whole life, as long as I can remember. Then looking at my own handwriting, it's like I went through loads of different characters before I finally settled on the script that comes out now when I write. And I find that really interesting. And thinking about why I don't do this much, it's probably because feelings. And there are often a lot of them.
The image of the song is really fascinating. So many of us have those secret diaries, those letters of the past, or boxes full of old stuff. I have a box of some really old Moulette stuff from our gigs all the way back to 2002. That's nostalgic, but this song, funnily enough, made me think about that because, you know, when we're talking about ritual and my relationship with ritual, Moulettes represents a ritual that I actually like and I like about my past self. Whereas obviously exploring your past self in other ways can be quite a painful experience.
It brought a lot of things to the surface, for sure. So I had this was the plan, to have this ceremonial bonfire where I would burn things. You know, I didn't burn the very meaningful things, but I did burn a lot of diaries. And even though it felt cathartic at the time, I don't know what that signifies really. But I suppose there's a intersection between clutter of the physical kind and emotional clutter, I think. When you're trying to decide whether to let something go or keep it, it's something that a lot of us have problems with, but it's it felt good to burn the things anyway. Burn them all. Burn it. And I didn't burn any photos because that's got chemicals in it.
Yeah, I always feel a bit weird burning photos, like I'm burning a Horcrux, like a piece of someone's soul.
I also burnt some school reports. I did read some of them.
Nice.
That was funny. And afterwards, this song just presented itself in its entire form and was written within half an hour. And that was the other thing that I was interested in, as to those times, which for me don't happen so often as I would like. I feel like it's the same for a lot of people that I've talked to about any kind of a creative expression. The things that come out fast, like you're just conduit for it and it's just earthing itself through. There's a purity to it, and there's certainly a sense of satisfaction. And, you know, because they come out so complete, I think they have a different resonance sometimes to things that have been more considered, more worked upon. Obviously, through the Xenolalia project, it's had its own metamorphoses, as everything has. But essentially, the feeling and the structure and the words all came out, and the chords. And it was in a major key.
Oh, holy wow.
Is an achievement for me because
You
would only play in the minor
Yes.
key pretty much for my whole childhood. And luckily I had teachers that kind of, you know, understood and indulged that. But for me it was Eastern European composers in a minor key. And that was how I was getting down for a long time. And ever since Ray appeared on the scene...
Careful what you say here, I am editing this.
She's just effected this beautiful transformation where, you know, I'm sneaking them in all over the place. There's majors now. Majors. And even, you know, at the beginning I would say that the majors were only there to make the minor fall. They're more dramatic. But thank you, Ray, for, you know, completing my harmonic spectrum.
If I may take all the pleasure, then please let it be mine, because it's really, it's just really lovely to see you blossom and really, you know, take up space in this new major world that you've discovered. New major world. Whoa. What? Let's talk about the artwork for Words. You've created all of the artwork for the releases, the posters, digital content, you name it. You got your collage materials out and you've expressed yourself. Tell me more about how you approached the visual kind of side, the visual aspect for this song.
For the artwork, I had this sense that I wanted to make something that had a naivety to it. And it kind of recalls some of the early artwork that I made, like the debut album was built in a box as well, The Ship on the Sea. And I wanted to make something that had a kind of magical and childlike, fantastical escapism to it. So I wanted to try and recreate the scene as I fantastically remember it. And there's the little fire with the twigs, and the shoebox walls are papered with all the lyrics, which are typed out on baking paper to get translucent quality. And then the clouds have also got words in them typed up on my old typewriter, which I kept thinking I should get rid of, but now I'm not going to get rid of my typewriter. The trees are growing out with hands. Hands are a theme that's running through all the Xenolalia project because of how communicative hands are, and because they are five-fingered like this project. And you can see through a cutout hole in the shoebox, there's the Earth from space. And I wanted those to be the two focal points, so the fire and the earth from space, because when I was looking at the embers in the fire, I was like, oh, looks like a city seen from space. There's just nothing better than looking at a fire, and when the embers really get going, that's a good time.
Yeah, really hypnotic and mesmerising.
It also felt appropriate to have a collection of things in a box, because that was what started the whole thing off. I wanted it to have a nostalgic, domestic quality to it as well. Precious things in a box.
Yeah, I wrote a song about keeping precious things in a shoebox. It was quite a literal interpretation of things for me at the time, actually, and also one of those songs where you as a writer are the channel, and it kind of almost passes through you into existence, much like what you were saying a bit earlier. Knowing in a bit more detail now how this song came to be, and knowing the lyrics as I do, Words has a literal feel for me. The lyrics, going through old letters, flicking through my diary. The embers were glowing like a city seen from space, the lyric that you just quoted there now. Other than these quite literal interpretations of the acts that I imagine you were doing and you were going through at your mum's house, what else does this song highlight or shine a light on for you?
The song is partly about considering grief and how that changes you. Grief for choices untaken and lives unlived. But in this a cappella version, the ending was changed to not focus on a particular grief, but instead on the appreciation of a life extremely well lived. And doing the residency and playing and singing with all of those people was what brought that out, and that's how I feel about it. That communal expression of music and life is what vitality means.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Hannah. It's really lovely to have a background on a song or a piece when you've brought it to us in its infancy. But doing these deep dives for the Podling really has a way of opening up each song and kind of letting you see all the intricacies of it. It's also great, I think, to look back on these pieces after working so hard on them and, doing that like focused, often quite intense work on one specific song. And then coming to something like this where we've kind of got a bit of hindsight and we're talking about things and how things have got to this point, we almost get like a bird's eye view of its progress. We can see where it started almost, and then we can see the shape that it's taken now. Maybe we should do a retrospective once the project is complete and see how the 55 pieces of music have evolved since their initial releases. Because, inevitably, songs are always morphing and shape-shifting, and to me, I think that's a really intriguing process to observe and, talk about. Hey, Patreons, maybe hit us up in our inbox and let us know if that's the thing you want to listen to. Now I think it's time for you to meet some of the vocalists from our a cappella supergroup. Kassia Zermon, who you may also know as Bunty.
I am Bunty, and I am... What am I?
Faye Houston, Blythe Pepino, and Ríoghnach Connolly.
Oh, right. Hello, this is Ríoghnach Connolly. I'm a singer and a flute player and long-time ally of the militia.
So great to have you all on the pod. Individually, the artists in this ensemble wield incredible power, both on stage and off, and it's been a humbling and magical experience getting to know them better through song. We sent some questions to everyone and let our covens sit with them for a while. Here's what we discovered. Now, due to the nature of how we've had to record this podling, you may notice varying levels of audio quality. We hope it doesn't take away from what our guests have to say, or the enjoyment we hope you'll get from this podling.
I was struck really by how much correspondence there used to be, how many letters. This is something I'm quite nostalgic for. I find the written word very precious in all of its manifestations, and there's something really beautiful about pen to paper especially. And all of these reams of diaries that I was going through, which was mostly, a cringe fest for me, but it was fascinating as well. My question is, have you ever been a keeper of a journal or a diary that you regularly wrote in? Or are there ways that you've used writing in the past as a therapeutic habit? And what are the ways that this can be useful as a writer and as a human?
Faye Houston.
I used to religiously keep diaries when I was in my early teens. I have a lot of them, a few of them, some of them still, but I daren't look at them. I did that probably about 10 years ago and cringed, so I haven't looked back too much. But I think, it's quite a cathartic way to work, to be, to practice. So in terms of maybe waking up in the morning and just writing out your dreams or words that are just stuck in your head, or lines to a potential song, or but just like when I was younger, now looking back, not wanting to look back, there's a nice element in the fact that you don't have to necessarily use anything productively, that you come up with. It's just a splurge, it's just that kind of therapy. And then it can sit in a box for 20 years and you can worry about it being there.
This song, Words, came out in a rush after I had been delving through all of my old things, letters and old diaries that I'd written, some of which I burnt on a bonfire. And it was quite a cathartic happening, and it felt like a ritual of sorts. What is your relationship to ritual? Do you have any rituals that you do before you write or record or perform to get yourself in the right headspace? And also, what are your thoughts about ritual in general and how it can inform a daily rhythm?
Here's Bunty.
So before I play, always I will just need to find a space where I can be on my own and either no one can hear me or at least I can't see anyone, like a toilet booth at the most desperate time. And just like almost exorcise sounds out of my mouth just to get that feeling of sounds happening in my body and in my mouth. I always want the first sound coming out to be before I'm there actually performing. So, lots of high sounds, low sounds, silly sounds, kind of like sounds, like a slight exorcism of a first sound, if that makes sense.
Faye Houston.
On rituals, I'm not currently engaging in any kind of constructive or deliberate rituals that are constructive or creative, but they can be so beautiful and enlightening and refreshing, depending on the type, of course. And it's something I would love to install in my day-to-day being to help kind of feel more like me, feel more comfortable with my choices, decisions, just being kind of at peace, and I think some sort of ritual, whether it be writing every day, whatever that may be, or having time to myself to reflect, to plan, but in a kind of relaxed, chilled way. I don't know. Time to look into it.
Raina, do you have any rituals?
Loads. Some are good for me and some are bad. But that's not for today. These are massive questions. Oh my God. I've just got like the Little Dragon song in my head and I go, ritual, union. We all have a ritual that sort of puts us at ease before we perform. Mine used to be, hiding in the toilet with with the Scrabble. And I quite like the act of like putting my makeup on and having a cup of tea. You know, it depends on the gig because you have different ways of surviving and with different masks. So it depends which mask I'm going to be putting on, you know.
For me, it's just interesting reflecting on this song, how it's made me feel and what it's made me think about. I mean, I've had a very interesting relationship with ritual. Some of my family history in terms of their experiences with religion and faith and spirituality and how that impacted my life. It's really interesting to hear more about what people think about ritual. Talking about past selves is also such an interesting subject. You know, people like to use cliches like your spiritual journey and things like this, and that's not a term that I'm comfortable using. Memory and identity and rebirth and parts of our character that we lay to rest and put to the flames. You know, this is very sort of spiritual language, but something that so many humans on a very real level can relate to. And that's why I love this song so much.
I've thought quite a bit about this question, and each time I've come to it, I've changed my I've changed my mind. But essentially, when it comes to recording or writing in my own space, my rituals kind of revolve around making sure that space is comfortable and tidy. So my home studio setup is very small and humble, and it's in a shared space, which isn't ideal. But working your way backwards through the room, I've got a dining table behind me, which is just a magnet for anything and everything. Coats, bags, stuff that doesn't really have a home. It just ends up on the dining table. And then you've got the living room space beyond that. So what I tend to do is before I start work is I'll have a little hoover round, or I'll make sure that the table is clear. So when I swivel around in my chair, I'm not faced with absolute chaos. Because that can really change a session, you know. You don't want to be thinking about anything other than what you're working on at the time. My morning ritual is sitting by the front window with a cup of coffee in silence for as long as it takes for me to finish that cup. And then there's the pre-gig ritual, which you've all spoken about. And mine these days is at least trying to get a walk around the block. Yeah, like Raina says, kind of getting into your gig clothes that's quite important for me. I like to be wearing something that I don't wear for any other purpose other than to perform in. And when energy is really low, a shot of Buckfast seems to go down a treat. That's definitely becoming a ritual.
Ritual. I love rituals. I want more rituals. They always make me feel more connected to the world and aliveness and the people around me, and doing things sort of ritualistically just feels like this deeply resonant practice. In some ways, whatever it is, I'm sure there's exceptions to that, but many of the ones that I've experienced, especially when people are doing something in a synchronized way, because that's usually kind of a characteristic of ritual, is that everyone will be doing something either at the same time or like a repetitive thing that everyone might interpret in their own way. And yeah, so I guess there's a rhythm to it and a composition to it and a real comfort in that, and a sense of connection that you don't necessarily get in any other sort of situation. Like synchronized dancing, singing in unison, chanting things, creating smells that everyone's smelling simultaneously. And I think one of the greatest things about rituals is a feeling that you're part of something outside of just you, that you're connecting to some sort of source, be it fellow humans, nature, the elements, magic, sort of space, universal things, spacescapes, and community, a sense of community, which is so important to everyone. I think everyone needs that.
It was a ritual that I had to do for some time now. I had intended to. Going through old letters, flicking through my diary, calling up the ghost of the girl I used to be.
What excites you about performing in a vocal group and singing with the Xenolalia coven?
I would like more push on the impromptu and improvised, just because I think that the voice is such a tool and it's really necessary for discovery and provocation and dissent. And like, if it's an extension of all of us as individuals, it can only be beautiful, it can only be raw, it can only be more powerful. So more, please.
Reflecting on the privilege and the sort of the dream that's been manifested and having these particular singers singing together. I particularly remember years ago wanting Rhee and Faye to be in the same ensemble, and then as the sort of thing developed, Kassia's vocal loops and what she does with that, and the fact that she has a history with Faye singing, and then Blythe being such a, to my mind, a shining light for good songwriting and also fantastic voice. It's been absolutely incredible to hear what it actually sounds like in the room and what it feels like with those personalities. I mean, you can't really explain that on a musical score, the characters that are involved and the characters that you can hear coming through when experiencing it live.
I'm interested to know which musical or vocal works have really inspired you. You know, they could have really juicy chords in them, or they could be full of melismatic goodness. I'm going to open this one to the floor, but Blythe, let's hear from you.
I don't know, really. I mean, I had a Beach Boys tape. Best of the Beach Boys was my first cassette tape. And I think that probably had a big impact on my impression of harmony work. Songs like Help Me Rhonda, help me Rhonda, and other incredible Beach Boys songs with the most amazing intricate harmonies that I used for the most poppy of songs, and unusual structures and things like that. Actually, the Beach Boys have, their songs are very unusually structured a lot of the time as well. But then also, obviously, massively influenced by Kate Bush and Joni Mitchell, and then more modernly by bands like Grizzly Bear and Dirty Projectors, all of whom I'm so attracted to because they have this intricate way of dealing with harmony, and things are changing and being sculpted in a very thought out way that links to the theme of the song and feels very artistic to me, and so that's why I love it. So yeah, all of those people massively influenced me, but no songs in particular.
And how about for you, Raina? Like, are there any particular tunes or songs that have spoken to you in any way?
Loads. But I love that trio Bulgarka. I really love that, the Bulgarian harmony and the way they are hard singers and excruciatingly close harmony, and then obviously it resolves minor to major.
Faye has the most unique sound wave I've ever recorded in terms of vibrato and with the range she has. and the tone, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. I really enjoyed reminiscing with her at the residency, talking about how she has sung in the Moulettes several times at different times, and I liked her recalling the story of her breaking to the family that she's in a prog band. I could listen to Faye talk for hours. She's a great storyteller and very, very funny. I just want to hear more about how she sees this relationship over time.
Performing with Moulettes has given me so much in so many ways every time I've performed with them. From I don't know how many years ago when we first performed together, it was music I'd never really heard much of, and the style, and of course nothing like the very music Moulettes play, mesmerizing. And I kind of break personal boundaries every time, or achieve things that I never even thought about, like getting into a little bit of auto harp or playing a bit of timpani while singing, and in the earlier days, and singing lines and learning vocal parts that were more complex, intricate, interesting, challenging that I'd ever attempted to sing before. And that sense of achievement, as well as all the other amazing highs of performing with Moulettes. Just that feeling of inspiration and feeling, that go-get feeling, like, okay, I can do this, I want to do this more and more. And I know there's been big gaps in between performing and being with Moulettes, but it just hits me every single time, and nothing's changed between the first time all those years ago to this residency more recently. Literally life-affirming, career-affirming experience, and lifelong friendships and love, and it just comes through whenever we're together and perform. And more, please.
All these words, oh, what were they worth? They all burn the same, my old flame.
You have been listening to part 1 of a 2-part podling. The conversation continues in part 2, wherever you get your podcasts.
A line that links the person to the past, one to offer comfort, to reassure. It was a ritual that I had to do for some time now. I had intended to.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of this Moule podling, celebrating the latest Xenolalia release, Words a Cappella. If you're just joining us here, head back to part 1 to get the full story.
Of the girl I used to be. All these words, oh, what were they worth? They all burn the same, my old flame. Strange to
One subject I did want to talk about was the through line in terms of memory and the relationship between your old self and your new self, which this song brings up, talking about ritual. And ritual is about memory a lot of the time. It's about recreating something special or trying to recreate. Particularly people like Jung talking and trying to dissect what religion and spirituality was. He talked about ritual a lot. A lot of it is about recreating this sense of wonder through a practice. Sometimes it can become very theatrical, it can become very simple, but I like this attachment to ritual and memory, particularly when talking about this song and listening to Hannah talk about what this song means to her and where it came from. Ritual and memory have a very interesting relationship. And we're not just talking about religious things with ritual, obviously. We're talking about habit. We're talking about cathartic therapy for oneself and, being part of something bigger and the community. And the thing that kept on coming back to me talking about this subject was the ritual of writing music and touring it, which is what we've done for several years now. And I don't think there's anything that compares to the ritual of writing music and then playing it over and over again, and playing it in different places, playing it for different people, and trying to recreate the magic of that initial idea. And by the process of recreating it, going through the ritual of performing it, the ceremony of it, with all that entails, how, in one sense, you remember the good feelings of that song and where it's come from. Through doing the ritual of playing the songs, they take on a whole nother new spiritual significance for you and a different resonance. And to my mind, music is the best vehicle for ritual, and it's just such a privilege to be able to go through that ceremony with such a group of wonderful people who are ever changing, ever growing, and always redefining for me what it means to be a musician in this band with its history and its wonderful theatre, the stage in so many ways, not the literal stage, the very many roles that we have played in each other's lives.
So it can be one thing performing a song a cappella, just purely vocally as a single voice, but quite different when you're in a group of other voices. Has singing in an a cappella group, a purely vocal ensemble, ever been something that you wanted to pursue in your musical career?
Like, I've been in choirs before, but I generally don't like the idea that everybody has to depend, they have to kind of flatten their voices to all blend. Like, I don't see why you have to blend in a way that makes everybody go into their nasal cavity. Mainly because I'm not really friends with my nasal cavity. What if there was like 10 Celine Dion's? Oh no, terrible, awful. Maybe, Celine's not that bad. But yeah, there's something about Celine that gives me the shits. So I like the idea that disparate voices can still blend, that they don't have to be uniform. So yeah, I think more of that. That's what I've really loved about this particular project, is that we were all so different and we held back and we had dynamic, but essentially we're so different, and that's what worked for me. That's what was exciting.
Do you remember the first time you heard a choir or unaccompanied voices, and where were you? What was it, and how did it make you feel?
Well, I grew up with sean-nós singing, so my grandparents were all sean-nós a cappella singers, unaccompanied. Obviously we don't call it a cappella because, it's just singing in the house, isn't it? All my people just sang every day, whatever they were doing. It was sort of like the soundtrack to everything. The first time I heard a choir, the Kool-Aid singers, actually, were really something else. I remember them as a really small child, and well, I just remember them as being massive, massive men with huge beards and amazing knitwear. And they were in a really small pub called Clancy's in Milltown Malby in County Clare. And it was during the Willie Clancy week, and our family would have been going there since its inception and stayed with friends in the town. And I remember really small, like being really small and sneaking into Clancy's. And they were all standing up and singing in, like, they're from the Gaeltacht area in North Cork. You know, Earlo Leonard would be a descendant of them, would be a Kool-Aid singer. And his people, Sean O'Reilly, the first Irish composer of mass. Not the first, but a really iconic figure in traditional music. These singers sang in Irish, in Kool-Aid Gaeltacht Irish, and spoke all Irish. So I would have been taken there, but nobody could get in. Only I was little, so I think I went in through a window. And then I went in under a table. And all the windows were open for everybody outside to hear them. And I just remember the window panes rattling with the strength of all their voices. It was quite... It gives me kind of goosebumps thinking, remembering it. And it was amazing.
Blythe is an absolute pleasure to work with. A great team player and always willing to step up to the plate and lead as well. And I guess I'd like to hear more about her experience with vocal ensembles and choirs and leading choirs and the push and pull of that relationship, leadership versus the collective ensemble, and whether in the Marmot or from song to song she felt the roles within this a cappella group changing.
I think that in any vocal ensemble, you have voices that meld or enjoy melding and tend to lean towards that. And then you have voices that enjoy having a distinct character within the group. And hopefully the composer, as was the case with the Moulettes and the a cappella version of their songs, this was very much anticipated in terms of the sort of casting for each voice was anticipated really well. So quite often the case where you have a much lower voice that has those kind of timbres, and then higher voices, and then more distinct character voices that do more percussive things. And I think that was definitely the case with this ensemble. And people kind of fall into those different categories as well during the songs. But obviously every ensemble is different, and also you need a special ability to be really dynamic and flexible as a cappella singer, because each song will require you to do different things and fit into the sound world of that song in a different way. And I like to think of that as these characters. So you might be a certain character for the intro, and then a different character for partway through the chorus, and then change again. And so it's you have to be quite nimble at moving around. In terms of leadership, I think that means that a lot of the time that shifts around when you're actually singing the songs. When you're not singing the songs and you're discussing the songs, I think it's a different thing. Some people, just like in any team, tend to take leadership roles. Some people tend to sit back until something particular is very important to them, and then they pipe up. Some people, focus on the situation in a different way, and some people are more have a more of an overview, and some people are a bit more kind of in the moment, and those people tend to be guided. It's a really interesting process, and it's been completely different in all of the different ensembles that I've been in. But there are those sort of through factors, those through threads that
that seem to pop up again and again with an a cappella group, simply because you are dealing with quite a different soundscape because everything's moving through the voice.
Faye, I was wondering, how different do you find working with a vocal group compared with being a voice amongst other instruments in other bands or ensembles?
I think I tend to feel more exposed when singing in a vocal group. I get the kind of nowhere to hide feeling or anxiety, which makes me feel more nervous perhaps. But I do feel a higher level of protection and belonging in a purely vocal group. Maybe because you're all doing the same thing, all in the same position, and are kind of fully supporting each other musically and emotionally, all being in the same boat. It's definitely a different feeling to being just one singer or one of two or three in a band. There's definitely a level of gratification or satisfaction I get when performing and singing along with just other voices. It's that I don't get with any other kind of project or band or vocal session on a tune for someone. It's very different and very special.
Ree, this might be slightly unfair to ask you to recall many years back, but can you remember the first time you heard Hannah sing and play the cello, and what did you think or feel?
I remember being bowled over by someone who had a voice that sat with their instrument, just like mine. You know, the frequency of Hannah's voice sitting on the cello was perfectly matched. And I always think like my flute is just an extension of my voice and how I voice everything in my head. Just like most people do, but at the time I didn't realise that other people did that as well. You know, something that I didn't just take for granted. And yeah, like she's an exceptional cellist, and her and Ruth were just phenomenal together. And then I was putting on a night called Ladybeard, and they were both very bold and very cackly, and I was going to scold them, but then I remembered that it was my fault because I'd paid everybody in Buckfast. And those were the early days, Buckfast days. I had Buckfast ordered into the local off licence, especially. He thought I was ordering it in from Ireland. He didn't realise that it was actually from Devon. Yeah, it's all Devon's fault.
Having gone through this ritual for so long with Hannah, we remember in a different way, not just different things, the way we remember about our history with our past selves in this band. For me, there is actually a really clear linear line from listening to Queen, Ladysmith Black Mambazo on Graceland, even like Take Six, Christian a cappella, gospel stuff, Beach Boys, Brian Wilson's vocal arrangement and delivery. There's a very clear line for me listening to those records and then wanting to do what those people did on those records, to finding Hannah and Ruth singing together, and then all of the great vocalists, finding Ray, Faye, Kassia. All of these people have been part of our story, but also there's always been a desire to be vocal heavy, like some of those bands that I used to listen to and be drawn to from a very young age. And not just saying, oh, that's lovely, but actually looking and learning about how they went about their vocal arrangements and studying it and actually trying to recreate it in our own way. There's so much in those disciplines of those records that we've sort of tried to explore in some of our arrangements. But there's also a really clear linear line from that music fan to meeting Hannah all the way through to this point. It's much more of a linear memory than say, Hannah or a lot of other Moules might have. And I find that really interesting because Hannah's sort of talking about looking back at your old self and sort of being cringy and not really recognising that person. Whereas for me, in what might sound quite an immature sort of confession, is that it doesn't feel like I've really changed that much in terms of listening to those records, finding some musicians who can sing like that, be brave with arrangements to this very point where we are now. And I don't feel bad about thinking about that person. In fact, it's still a very familiar character within my own creative process and memory, even to this point.
Blythe, I noticed that you use your own form of music notation in your notebook in rehearsals. Can you tell me how that came about and how you've worked out a way to notate melodies and harmony lines?
Literally, this has come out of my inability and not my inability actually, just my laziness, because I can't be bothered to transcribe the a cappella songs that I learn. Mainly because most of the time they're really hard, but also because I can't be asked. And actually, it's much easier to look down and see a kind of interpreted visual score that links to your learning process. I'm quite a visual learner, so when I create a little notepad of dots and squiggles and things, I have a little language of my own that I've made up. So a step up means going up, obviously, and things like an arrow swinging up means that I'll need to like pitch bend my note up, and you can get in all kinds of character information. Like if you draw like a squiggly line, then that might mean it's really energetic, and then there are bits that look a little bit more like normal transcribing, like there's a bar line or a rest, and I'll just put little numbers under it to tell me how long that rest is. Yeah, it's easier, and I find it easier to remember when I look at it what's going on, and it's more personal to me. And the whole process of doing that also helps me to learn the song. Basically, that is my learning process. I will listen over and over to the song, and as I'm listening, I'll write out the lyrics, and as I'm listening, I will interpret the song. And you know, harder bits get more material, get more lines or more squiggles, and easy bits are just brushed over. And that keeps the amount of effort down, so I can watch more stupid television, put my feet up more.
Raina, do you think that there is a sweet spot for the amount of harmonies or vocal parts sung at one time? You know, like 8-part harmony in a piece of music. And why do you think this could be?
Okay, so I wasn't really raised in a choral kind of background or a classical background at all. So my folk background or sensibilities would lean towards more 3-part, but like the mid being the dancer. The alto's the dancer. So the mid will dance around and can move throughout the major minor thing. So for me, it's a 3-part, or if people are going to behave themselves, a 4-part. But I kind of like it when one of them isn't behaving themselves, just usually because it's me. What I love about Appalachian harmony is that there is a sour note. There's an excruciating fourth that happens that makes everybody feel really unsteady, and it's quite jarring. And then it will resolve and go major towards the end of a phrase. And then you suddenly feel the relief of the note or the harmony resolving. And I think I love the psychology of that. You know, like making everybody kind of lean in and go, oh, please resolve. And then it resolves, and yeah, it's all good. That's my vibe. Good question. I never thought about that before, but yeah. And I don't sing loads of Appalachian harmonies, but I think I love a major over harmonic minor or a minor over a major. Like, I love that lean in.
So, Blythe, listening to you perform your music solo at the Rose Hill residency, I was really struck by your use of harmony and your harmonic language, both through the piano and during our rehearsals for the a cappella performance. Are there any particular pieces of music or artists or composers that you feel have influenced how you hear and feel harmony?
Well, I grew up playing classical piano, and listening to quite a lot of classic jazz as well. So I think that probably meant that I had a really good engagement with harmony, and close harmony especially, from an early age. Playing the piano is especially important because you can visualise harmony. So what was previously something that is happening in one's head abstractly, I can feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my fingers. And also I can see the physical distance between all the different chromatic notes, which I guess would be different, I think, on a horn instrument, and again different, slightly less visualised on a violin, although very physical on violin. But I think there's something about the piano which makes it really easy to kind of see chords as you play them and sort of have that as a visual aid when you're thinking about songwriting and when you're thinking about song construction between instruments and the voice. So maybe that had an influence.
Getting all of you together in a room and making sounds with you has been a real life-defining marmot for me. It is totally lush, and I'm really excited about what we might do in the future. Is there anything you have in mind that you would like to do with the a cappella ensemble? Places to go, things to do, what to sing? And how do you see what we do evolving?
Singing with such an incredible group of incredible, beautiful, mind-blowing humans. It definitely was the ultimate soul-enriching marmot, and there simply must be more, more a cappella wonder. One of the ideas that someone had during the week, the residency week, was the thought of a cappella with strings doing something that, the thought of that is spine-tingly. I guess I'd have to think more on it, but some of us were talking about doing little clusters of gigs around, but accompanying it with sort of workshops with the youth or, anyone in those particular towns or cities where we're doing a gig. Something like that. Amazing.
Ooh, good questions. Firstly, I'd like to agree with you. This bunch of humans is just like out of this world and absolutely mind-blowing, and I feel very honoured to be a part of this a cappella group and to be singing with you all. You're just phenomenal, and I can't get enough of yourselves and your voices. I'm just really looking forward to singing with everyone more. I knew that would be the case from the get-go, really, but the Friday of the a cappella performance was the first proper, block of time that we all had to be together in the room and sing over and over and over again. And if there's one thing that I love to do, as boring as it might sound to many people, it's singing the same things or playing the same things. That's why I don't really struggle with practicing. It's not something that I find dull, because I just love to do it. I don't know why. So to be able to do that again and again with you lot would just be fantastic and probably blow my little mind. Places to go, like where would I like to sing? I really love singing in churches and cathedrals and buildings that were made for singing acoustically, so unplugged. Fills me with a lot of joy. And I also am really excited to just like rock up to a gig without any gear. That would be great. But yeah, churches, cathedrals, any kind of space that is acoustically designed to be sung in. That's where I want to be at, and that's totally where I want to sing. Things to do. I think it was yourself, Hannah, and maybe Cass also, who had the idea to take the group to people. So take the a cappella ensemble to the masses, if you like, and do workshops and things. Because the great thing about singing is the instrument itself is you. Everybody, almost everyone has a voice. And regardless of what people might think of their own singing, everyone can sing. And it's such a joyful thing to do. And it can be a really fulfilling experience, whatever level you are. You don't have to be a professional musician or a professional singer to really benefit from singing and singing in a group. So I'm very excited to bring the a cappella ensemble and all that we do to other groups of people who want to sing and enjoy singing with others. What to see? Well, I guess seeing as there won't be much of a load-in, we'll just be bringing ourselves, we'll have time to see everywhere. And usually cathedrals and churches are in cute or nice little places of the world, so let's just see it all.
Even if you think you can't sing, the thing that I love about this vocal group and other vocal groups is the use of pushing air. Oof, and ah. Even if you don't think you can find a tone, there are noises and sounds and physical body percussion and a physical presence that you can bring to a group. So I think everyone, if they're up for it, can have a place in a vocal ensemble. One of the most powerful things with friends and family, or whoever you sing with, is that it can happen anywhere. So I'm looking forward to hearing and experiencing and being part of these songs and these voices in unexpected places, as well as when we do tour it, where song might erupt before and after the shows, in the pub before, after, on the bus, in a queue, anywhere really. And that is what makes a vocal ensemble so powerful. And I look forward to the joy and the surprises that can come from this particular communion.
That's all we have time for this episode. We'd like to say a big thank you to our guests for their candid comments and sublime company. As ever, the sincerest of thank yous to our Patreons. It was so great to see some of you on tour last month. All the music created in this project is only available to Patreon subscribers. That's 55 pieces of music, delivered to you on completion. Psst, that's before it's released to the general public. You can find us on all the socials and our website at www.moulets.co.uk. Until next time, take care.
Before we return back to the dust, no end and no beginning. All the stars are looking down on us. This is the time we're given. Before we return back to the dust, no end and no beginning. No end and no